5 for 5, man. All right, so first thing we're gonna start with, we are going to have Lucas get into his 3-point stance. We're gonna work on getting out of that stance in a more efficient way. Something that Lucas and I have been working on the last couple weeks, so he's already pretty proficient at it. But what we're looking at is that Lucas doesn't come up out of his stance vertically. He gets out of his stance moving backwards to his anchor point. That's what we're gonna call this, because it's really like an air raid vertical set, okay? And so he's gotta work vertically back on a vertical plane to get to what we call the anchor point. And the purpose of that is to get to his spot and wait for contact from the pass rusher. This is different than an angle set where he rushes out to his spot and initiates contact with the pass rusher. In this type of set, he's gonna get to his anchor point and he's going to wait and anticipate that contact coming. What you're gonna see me do from a behavioral perspective is Lucas is gonna get into his 3-point stance and I'm gonna hold this bag here. This is Lucas's physical cue. This tells Lucas that if he comes up vertically and hits this bag, we're gonna stop the rep immediately and go back into our stance and try it again until, you're gonna take a live rep here, until he gets out perfectly. Here we go on go. Ready, set, go. Without touching the bag. And that's how we know he gets out of his stance without popping up. Go. All right, so for the next link of our chain, all right, and that's what we do here. It's a behavioral technique we call chaining. And that's when we try to create a complex movement pattern by breaking it down into its individual links. The first section, the first link of this chain that you saw was Lucas in his 3-point stance, bag over the shoulder, making sure he gets out without touching the bag, without popping up vertically. But what we know is on game day, Lucas doesn't just get to set up in his stance and wait there for the play to be called. He's got to go to the huddle, he's got to get into the stance correctly and then get out of it under pressure. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of recreate a little bit of that. The best thing we can do to create meaningful behavior change is to simulate the environment as best we can in which the behavior needs to occur. So on this next link, what we're gonna add in is Lucas starting at about the depth of his huddle. And as Lucas starts to walk over, I'm gonna give him a 5 count. I'm gonna count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. At that point, Lucas needs to be in his stance. The bag will go up. I'll give him ready, set, go. And then we get out of the stance and we repeat that process. Once the rep is done, Lucas immediately will go back to the huddle and walk back over. And then we repeat it again and again. We're going for 5 consecutive reps without hitting the bag. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ready, set, go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Set, go. All right, so we've got 2 really good links down right now, okay? We set a nice foundation for Lucas just really working out of his stance, making sure he's not popping up vertically. We added in the second link of the environmental piece, right? The environmental piece of going to the huddle, walking out of the huddle, and most importantly, getting into your stance. Ask any offensive line coach, any NFL offensive lineman, which Lucas is, okay? Getting into your stance is probably the most important thing you can do, because if you don't get in correctly, you end up not getting out correctly. So we're gonna add this next link of the chain, which is he's still gonna come out of the huddle, get into his stance, but now I'm removing the bag physical cue, okay? Because he's done, at this point, 30 reps today, consecutive, without an error. So we're good. We're gonna remove that intervention, and now I'm gonna further impact his environment. I'm gonna become a pass rusher, okay? He's gonna get into his stance, and on go, I'm gonna take my step forward as he gets out and invite the outside hand strike, okay? Now, what we're looking for here, what we're adding to the contingent criteria, and when we work with behavior, it's important that our students, our clients, they understand that there's criteria involved to move to that next link. So in this case, on this link, the criteria is that the outside hand strike has to hit the upper outside part of my outside shoulder. We don't want hand down the middle, okay? That's death for an offensive lineman. We want to make sure this outside hand's getting here. And so we're going to take 5 reps and make sure consecutively the hand is hitting the proper placement. However, that does not mean the other pieces of the criteria are no longer being looked at. We're also going to make sure he's getting into the stance correctly, and once he is, that will indicate that we can move forward for the rep. If I see him get into the stance incorrectly, we stop and we start over. Okay? Let's see how it goes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reset. Go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reset. Go. Good. All right, so we're gonna get into this next link here. Okay. We just worked on outside hand placement. Now we're gonna put an emphasis on inside hand placement, okay? Because we use two hands and we try to use them independently. There are some NFL teams and college teams that want you to use both hands simultaneously. I've always been of the idea that you use both hands independently. Now, in Lucas's case, that's what he does. That's what the Chiefs, are okay with him doing. So that's what we're gonna work on. However, if Lucas played for another team, if he happened to play for maybe like the Tennessee Titans or a team that does two-hand punching simultaneously, then that's what we would work on, because we try to work on what the coaches need these guys to do. In this case, we're aligned, and so we're going to work on that. On this last link, okay, we worked on outside hand placement, high and outside, around the logo area of a jersey. On this next drill, we're going to now throw the inside hand, get it right on the hip, okay? Your hip, that's your center point for balance. If you can move my hips, you can move me, all right? And so we're gonna go high hand, low hand. Inside hand is the low hand, gonna get on the hip, gonna move me off my line as a pass rusher. As I'm rushing the passer, I pick out my chart. I'm charting my course to the quarterback, okay? In this case, I'm gonna try to take as straight a line as I can, knowing that Lucas is a vertical setter. I'm gonna try to beat him to his anchor point. What's very important for Lucas to be able to do is to stun me. We're gonna use his outside hand as a jab, as if you're a boxer. Maintain space. Look at this great extension here. Look at this reach he has, okay? So we're gonna use that. But once he stuns me, once he gets that space, now the inside hand has to move me off my course. That's why we're attacking the hip. He's gonna get that hand on the hip, and as I continue to move, he's gonna move me off my course. Now, the last piece of the criteria here is, you notice that we talked about outside hand extension. That goes for the inside hand too. When the arm is locked, the pecs are engaged, the triceps are engaged, okay? And he has the ability to lock me out. I cannot get in to his body. For offensive tackles, it's all about space. You cannot let the pass rusher get into you, okay? And so we always emphasize extension. When you get hands-on, are your arms extended? So that's also something we're gonna look at here. Again, this link of the chain, inside hand placement, extension. All right, so our next link, all right? We did outside hand placement, we did inside hand placement with extension, okay? Now what we're gonna do is, what happens when a pass rusher uses a pass rush move to get himself free? And here's what I mean by that. We're gonna walk this through, okay? Lucas is gonna get outside hand on. As a pass rusher, what I'm gonna do is use my hands to get his hand off me. That could be a swipe, that could be a chop. I could use my inside hand to rip up. The question becomes, what does an offensive tackle do in that situation? And what I've trained Lucas to do, what we've worked on for years, right? Years that we've worked together, is what we call stun and replace. Remember, we use that outside hand to stun the pass rusher. As a pass rusher, when I see that hand come, I'm immediately going to knock it away. What we too often see offensive tackles do is leave their hands where they end up when they get knocked off, or what we call sticky hands. Their hands get stuck wherever they end up. What I want Lucas and offensive tackles that I work with to really focus on is the replace part. Your hand gets knocked away, you can immediately replace it. And we want our offensive tackles to realize they have control over the pass rushers, no matter what the pass rush move is. So it's gonna look a little something like this. We're gonna engage, we're gonna get contact. I'm gonna come down with a real pass rush move. Lucas has to take that and get the hands right back to the same placement, okay? And you're gonna see me use a variety of moves here in this drill, and then we're gonna see how Lucas responds and reacts to each one. This is now another element of behavior science that we're adding to this chain, to this movement chain, okay? Which is something called latency. Latency, all right, is the period of time between a stimulus, in this case, a pass rush move, and a response or a behavior, in this case, Lucas's replace. We want to shorten that latency period. We want Lucas to respond and react to my pass rush move stimulus as fast as possible. That's what we're working on here. Let's see how it goes. Ready, set, go. Ready, set, go. Ready, set,